graciously.
We're preparing to
Can
go
you
live.
hear us?
I'll just get out of right now.
Hello?
Are you talking to us?
How about the people on the phone? Can you hear us?
Yes?
Can you hear Nick on the? Can you say hello?
Hello? We can hear it. Well, thank you. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and
They're watching
They're
another.
watching an old video.
I'll call it.
Someone has to mute
They're
their.
going to have to mute until they're ready to speak. Right?
They're looking at an old
Otherwise, we'll
video.
be picking them up.
We're live now.
Councilor Hatfield?
Present.
For some reason, I can't. This was large on the screen. Now go like that. I can't enlarge it. Is that bad thing?
Hi, John Kim and Dean. So
Yeah.
we have just gone live. Somebody might be running a video that's a little bit older, but we just went online.
Okay, so we should, that's not it.
And
Yeah, Kathy, I was just listening to the mayor and he was, on the video I was watching, you said John Kim's name, and so, I think I'm on the right version.
Policies. Which version is it, Dean?
So I got it off the live stream, John Kim.
Yeah, it says Wawa, Municipality Wawa live stream, YouTube.
Yeah.
All right, so I've got that. It says live stream offline.
I'm live on YouTube.
So maybe he should get out of it and then.
try going back out and then back into the YouTube.
And they're going to give
Here
their.
it is. Okay, I got it now.
Going back out and then back into the YouTube.
Okay, I'm in now.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, I got it now.
Going back out and then back into the YouTube.
Okay, I'm in now.
Could you put your phone on mute though?
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We are live.
Do I mute our phone? Do I mute this phone? Because we're picking up
Can
through
you
the
hear
other.
us? Can
Yes,
you
they
hear-
can hear us.
Yeah. As long as they can hear.
No, they wouldn't. So we're gonna get that feedback.
Well, Sept. Good evening and welcome to our meeting. I'd like to welcome our guest this evening, Chief Patricia Tenji, Wichita First Nation, Chief Jason Gauthier, Cincinnati Creek. Welcome, but also small town, I know most people here, so I'd like to welcome Linda Easton, Shirley Hale, and representing Wichita First Nation. I assume you are Alex Martin. Welcome, Alex. And on the line, we have John Kim Bell and Dean Fitzgerald. I'm correct. And also note that all of council is present along with staff. I just have an announcement for each year. Algoma Public Health implemented masking that requires employees and members of the public to wear a mask when you enter or remain in an enclosed space. I would ask everyone this evening to wear and keep their masks on during this meeting. There are masks available in the front entrance. I would also remind everyone to sign the contact tracing binder found at the front entrance. Council and staff are taking every precaution necessary to limit and slow the spread of COVID-19. For those individuals who will be presenting at this evening's meeting, I would like to remind you to please sanitize your hands when you sit at the front. Staff will ensure the microphone and equipment are sanitized prior to your usage. Please wait until you are signaled by staff to come forward. And with regards to introductions, I forgot Mr. Rinaldi. Welcome as well. Are there any disclosure of pecuniary interests? Seeing none, I have a mover to approve the agenda. Moved by Pat. All in favor? Carried. Prior to calling up the delegations, we would just like to point out the following. I want to thank everyone for participating in the council meeting tonight. Council will be hearing delegations tonight and receiving written comments on a proposed zoning bylaw amendment to remove a holding H symbol on the Mishpecotton Harbor Wharf lands, which is zone M1, general industrial, with a holding H symbol 40. Present zoning on the subject property was approved by the Ontario Municipal Board in a ruling issued July 15, 2019. The format of this meeting will begin with the clerk, Ms. Kathy Sear, outlining the method. Notice of this meeting was given listing the written submissions received regarding the proposed amendment. Delegations from representatives of Mishpecotton First Nation and Superior Aggregates Company will follow. Under the Planning Act, only the owners of the subject lands has appeal rights with respect to the removal of the holding H symbol. There are no third-party rights to appeal the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. Any person wishing to be notified of the passing of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment must make a written request to the clerk via email or mail.
Notices of this meeting were given by mail to all persons and public bodies as prescribed under the Planning Act on Tuesday, August 18th, 2020. As of 4:30 today, the municipality has received 4 submissions regarding the proposed zoning amendment to remove the holding H symbol. 1, Mishpecotton First Nation, Chief Patricia Tangi and Mr. Alexander Marcus, planner. Letter was dated September the 11th, 2020 and received on September 11th, 2020 by the clerk via email. Ms. Lindy Eason, letter was not dated. It was received on September 14th, 2020 by the clerk via email. Citizens Concern for Mishpecotton Bay, CCMB, Mr. Mark Listician, President. Letter dated September 14th, 2020, received on September 14th, 2020 by the clerk via email. Ms. Ann Lawson, email dated September 9th, 2020, received on September 9th, 2020 by the Deputy Clerk via email.
Tonight, nothing is before council regarding the use of the quarry lands, but only the area defined as the wharf area owned by Superior Aggregates. Council will not be making a decision tonight on the application, and the municipality has retained a professional planner to work with municipal staff to provide a full and detailed report to council on the application after tonight's presentations. I understand that the planner has asked several parties for some additional information such that the timing of our decision on this zoning application is not certain at this time, but will be put forward at a future council meeting. I would like now to invite representatives from Mishpecotton First Nation to provide their presentation. Please keep in mind that you'll be permitted a maximum of 20 minutes in total to present your materials. I understand that Mr. John Kimbell and Mr. Dean Fitzgerald are joining by telephone, and Mr. Alex Marquis is here in person to provide a PowerPoint summary of comments on behalf of MFN. So we allow you time to set up and please come forward.
Just a question, am I to present with the mask on? Is that the idea? Okay. I have a great smile and you're gonna miss that.
So, if you
Oh,
move
sorry,
over
yes, I
that
should
chair, so you can see
sanitize.
And then on the microphone, if you can press at the bottom, right side, just give it a moment, it will turn red.
Can you see Mayor?
I can see you.
Oh, I gotta share screen now. Oops.
Say a few words. I just want to, my name is Chief Tangi, and I just want to say a few words and thank Mayor and Council for the opportunity to be here tonight and to allow Mishpecotton and our advisors to be an important part of this process. I acknowledge Mark and Chief Jason as well. And
with that, I just want to say we have a really good group of advisors with Alex, who is on staff, and John Kim and Dean, who are regular advisors for Michigan. I'm going to let them take it away because they're our experts. I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief, and I would like to echo that gratitude. We really are appreciative of this time, and we are equally concerned about the proposal at hand. I'd like to make a brief introduction here and let everybody know in the room and on council and our neighbors at Superior Aggregates that our statements here today, what we are presenting is of public health and of a safe environment. Superior Aggregates is within walking distance to Michipicoten's reserve lands. One of the reserve parcels, IR49A, is located inside the footprint of Superior Aggregates land package. The proposed activities, some of which are unknown, impact Michipicoten and Wawa citizens alike. There's a long history here. Superior Aggregates site was surrendered in 1899. It was formerly part of the reserve under the Robinson Superior Treaty signed in 1850. And that release of land, that surrender, happened under some dubious circumstances, not to go into details there, but we do have the claim documents if you are interested. MFN members have lived and worked near and on the dock since its establishment, and the Michipicoten residential area of IR49 is less than 1 kilometer away from the quarry site. On the subject of consultation, Michipicoten was originally consulted approximately 15 years ago on the aggregates permit. A number of key studies were either inadequate or never undertaken by the prior owners of Superior Aggregates. Because, and we'll get into that in a second, because some studies were deficient or never undertaken related to groundwater monitoring, stormwater management, sulfur-bearing rocks, a spills contingency plan, the true impacts of the activities could not be identified at that time. And today we are still left with a certain degree of mystery around what the impacts of this proposed development will be. The Ontario Municipal Board only approved the activities of Superior Aggregates conditionally on Superior Aggregates undertaking and completing studies that have since not been undertaken. These conditions for approval have not been met after many years, as evidenced by the application that was put forth to Municipal Council on June 2nd, or rather to staff on June 2nd, and heard before Council on August 11th. Another condition for approval was from the OMB decision was to restore the dock, which is in an advanced state of decay, posing a threat of contamination to Lake Superior. The dock in an Aboriginal fishery, and a commercial aquaculture business is located in the water nearby. Both the land and water likely have species at risk that have not been adequately identified or screened, followed by adequate mitigations. Dean Fitzgerald will speak to that later in the presentation. Other impacts exist that haven't adequately addressed or identified. Sorry here. That haven't been addressed or identified at all, including increased traffic and increased dangers to public safety, as proposed trucking will happen through Michipicoten Mission on the Harbor Road and on Cemetery Road. And I think it's important for the council to consider seriously the impacts of severing the public from the foundational heritage site of this great city. The plan to load aggregate that was presented to us by Superior Aggregates was suggested that a conveyor belt would be used. A 300-meter long conveyor belt would be used to bypass the decrepit dock. We think that there is a high likelihood that there would be spills and contaminants from this site, releasing deleterious materials into the water and damaging an aboriginal fishery and a commercial fishery, and fish habitat more generally. More study is required to prevent the damage to fish habitat and species at risk. Therefore, the true impacts of the activities are unknown and pose a risk to public health, safety, as well as impacts to water quality and species at risk. Michipicotan's conclusions that these studies were undertaken, that must be undertaken now, as directed by the OMB, to maintain conformity and in the public interest of Wawa and its citizens. Wawa's council should not lift the hold until such time the public consultation has been adequately discharged with mitigation plans in place that are acceptable to the community, including MFM. This is you must all be familiar with this map. It's from your official plan. This is to show the location, and I'd like to point on the left hand of the screen to the blank space in a jagged outline that is IR 49. I think this is a telling metaphor of how municipal policy sees its relationship to MFM, a blank spot. The Ontario Municipal Board decision identifies explicitly 2 studies that were inadequate at the time of the decision. It also references an official plan amendment, and contained within that the language of the official plan amendment as attachment 2 in the material provided by municipality of Wawa. It reads that for any quarry, these 4 studies listed on the screen above you are required. A groundwater monitoring study and plan, a stormwater management plan, a sulfur-bearing rocks plan or study, and a spills contingency plan. Now, no groundwater observations were provided in the original application. Hence, the OMB identified a need to complete a suitable monitoring study to quantify groundwater elevations prior to aggregate extraction. A stormwater management plan was submitted in the original application. This was dated 2006 and revised in 2007. Since no groundwater study was completed, however, the submitted stormwater management plan was identified as deficient. The proponents were required to update that stormwater management plan before any extraction activities would be initiated. Similarly, a sulfur-bearing rock study. A study of sulfur or acid-generating rocks was included in the original application. Since acid-generating rocks can harm vegetation, fish, and wildlife, the Ontario Municipal Board identified a need to update this study to assess the risk of possible acid runoff from the proposed activity due to the fact that no groundwater study was completed. Since the acid runoff study was deemed incomplete, it identifies the assessment of risk to vegetation, fish, and wildlife was inadequate. Similarly, a spills contingency plan was present in the original OMB hearing. This was produced in draft form and continues, and was dated 2006 and continues to be in draft form to this day, some 15 years later. Like the other studies, the spills contingency plan needs a solid understanding of the groundwater, the impacts to the groundwater, in order for it to be deemed adequate. For this reason, the OMB identified a need to update the spills contingency plan for the proposed activity. And we have a number of concerns with this application beyond the absence or inadequacies of those 4 studies. As I mentioned, there are those insufficient and absent studies. There's also a 15-year-old species at risk study included in the OMB hearing. Legislation has changed substantially, and new species have been added to the species at risk list, some of which, as Dean will tell you, have been found in proximate lands and in proximate waters. The proponent incurred a Department of Fisheries and Oceans violation from 2019. Blast rock falling into the water and contaminating the fishery habitat. While the OMB decision clearly states from the applicants that most of the transportation of aggregates material will occur by boat, there is no detail as to how much is planned to be trucked. And we should note at this time, that the historic use of the dock as a transfer station for mineral aggregates relied on the now defunct Algoma Central Railway. There was not excessive heavy industrial traffic going through the mission at that time. We see that there are significant risks and dangers posed to the public as a result of this increased traffic. Roads are not constructed to handle this increased traffic of heavy traffic. There will be erosion to these roads. There will be damage to these roads. There are tight turns on this road. I drive it every day. So I'm very familiar with it. So we implore Wawa to require a fulsome traffic study evaluating the impacts on the Mission Cemetery Road in the residential area. As I mentioned before, there are significant concerns over severing the access to this foundational and prime heritage site as designated in the Wawa official plan Schedule D. Wawa has designated the Old War site as a heritage site, and we believe the public should have access to this site. How will Superior Aggregates maintain and improve this access to this important heritage site? We would be interested to know if this is in the plans, if this is in the plans for Wawa, and in the plans for Superior Aggregates. Similarly, a lighting and illumination study is woefully outdated. We know that the harbor site is visible from tourist lookouts and from Long Beach residents. A lighting plan needs to be prepared and required under Section 41 of the Planning Act, as is the power of the municipality to require Superior Aggregates of that. The Harbor Road, again related both to public access of the waterfront and to access to this key heritage site. Wawa must require a right-of-way upgrade and conveyance of the Harbor Road to the municipality to ensure safety and to maintain access to this important heritage site. Wawa must take seriously that historic shipping of materials from the harbor were predominantly shipped by rail to the ACR. The dock facility. The dock is decrepit. It's falling into the water, releasing deleterious substances into the water. The OMB decision was provisional upon the owners fully restoring the dock, which is, as I said, in a decrepit state. As you can see by the photos, both in the photo with the pilings from the old wharf, in the background you can see that this dock is literally, there is no exaggeration here, falling into the water, and that the state of the harbor road is entirely inadequate for the transportation of aggregate material. Why, we must ask ourselves, would Council rush ahead to approve the Superior application as originally reported on, recommended by Wawa staff in their report on this matter, when applications are clearly and obviously deficient due to the poor, absent, and outdated studies related to water quality and quantity, and ultimately the contamination of the pristine Lake Superior. The policy framework for the site is inadequate and outdated. This should be first rectified through Wawa's impending provincially mandated official plan review before lifting the hold and approving the site plan. There is a great opportunity in the forthcoming official plan review to create a much more suitable policy framework to guide the development of the Michipicoten Harbor Wharf area. Listed species at risk are known to inhabit the lands and waters surrounding the site. Why, again, would Municipal Council rush ahead to approve the Superior Aggregates application when the proposed plan severs important heritage features from public access? And lastly, why would Municipal Council rush ahead to approve the Superior Aggregates application? Little or no investment in infrastructure is proposed to be undertaken by Superior Aggregates. We ask what the true benefit beyond the 10 jobs proposed would be to Wawa by allowing this operation to go ahead as the current application states. To reiterate, the application as presented to Wawa was incomplete and insufficient. The OMB, I would like to remind you, granted a conditional approval, and these conditions have not been met. We strongly urge the municipality of Wawa to make appropriate use of the powers under Section 41 of the Planning Act to ensure compatibility, as stated in the Michigan Harbor Wharf Area Special Policy Overlay Area, it's a bit of a mouthful, and to minimize environmental impacts, as per the Michigan Harbor Special Policy Overlay and Official Plan. I will now hand it over to Dean Fitzgerald, my colleague.
Yeah, hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, welcome to the age of COVID. I like Alex, have a wonderful smile, but a shock of white hair, and so it's a little bit contrasting, so we make quite a duo. Thank you so much for participating and discussing this important matter. So in terms of background, very quickly, I wanted to let you know that I've done studies all over North America, and I've also did a master's focusing on streams and a PhD focusing on lakes. And I've given, taught courses at 4 universities, Wilfrid Laurier, Waterloo, and Windsor, as well as Cornell University in the United States, on field ecology and identification of animals, species at risk management, all these things. And during the last 25 years, I've given expert witness testimony for various matters, including the Ontario Municipal Board. And in the last 3 years or so, I've been working extensively with Chief Tangi and Don Kimbell and Alex on different matters, and often those matters consider in detail species at risk. We've looked at a number of species at risk studies for proposed mines within the Wawa area, for example, Prodigy Magino, and most recently, we also reviewed the proposed studies concerning the Next Bridge power line. I provided a written commentary on the species at risk studies for the Next Bridge power line, identified the strengths and weaknesses. And one of the things that came out of that study was that there's a large suite of different species at risk birds and animals and some plants that exist within the footprint of the reserve lands in Michipicoten. And some of those animals undoubtedly, you know, they don't watch the property line boundaries, undoubtedly also occur on Superior Aggregates land, although I've never done a survey on Superior Aggregates land. And so what I wanted to say with this slide is that I've been doing work in your area for over 3 years and have no problem sharing my insights on some of these topics. So in the particular discourse we're on here concerning Superior Aggregates, the species at risk study was never provided to Michipicoten First Nation. As I understand, based on my reading, DST engineers conducted a study sometime around 2004, 2005, and it was predominantly a desktop exercise. Because I've never seen it, I can only infer what the contents were based on the Ontario Municipal Board hearing. The Ontario Municipal Board considered different aspects, including woodland caribou and some other elements within the species at risk framework. A germane detail here is that the species at risk Ontario legislation was updated in 2008, but that was around the same time as this Ontario Municipal Board proceedings. And so when the written decision was presented in 2009, the decision from the Ontario Municipal Board member did not include or contemplate the 2008. And so the member from the Ontario Municipal Board identified that the 2005 species at risk study was satisfactory. And I have no issue with that. It was absolutely satisfactory based on the requirements in 2005. The key seminal difference is that 15 years has passed. There's an update to the species at risk legislation in Ontario. Of course, the federal legislation is in place the whole time, and there's a long list of species at risk that are likely on Superior Aggregates land that have never been contemplated. And so in particular, I'll mention only 2. And so the first is the endangered eastern myotis, which I think is, maybe was on the previous slide. The slide that I see on my screen is discussing the Superior Aggregates site, and it's making reference to Michipicoten Bay. And so in Michipicoten Bay, there's a remnant population of lake sturgeon, and the lake sturgeon is classified as a threatened species in Canada. And so under the species at risk legislation, you cannot harm, harass, or otherwise disturb lake sturgeon in the bay. And so, for example, if large boats come in the bay to pick up gravel or aggregate, the rudders of those boats, the propellers of those boats can stir up sediment, and that would be considered a disturbance or a harassment to lake sturgeon specimens. Because, as I understand, the 2005 study for species at risk did not even enter the water, there's no contemplation of sturgeon. And similarly, and I apologize because I wasn't watching the screen here, There's an endangered bat called eastern small-footed myotis, which is evident across the reserve of Michipicoten. There we are, the slide switched over here. And so in this context here, the studies that NextBridge conducted in the area identified the possible presence of the eastern small-footed myotis, and that's an endangered bat. And so they followed up with some field investigations and confirmed that the proposed power line was going to disturb habitat for eastern small-footed myotis. And so as a consequence, because of the expected disturbance of habitat used by eastern small-footed myotis, they proposed compensation and mitigation measures. And this was a bit of a surprise because the bat wasn't expected to have such a large population in the area, but one of the key problems there is that the bats don't read the books about where they're supposed to be living. And so the solution in this particular matter was that NextBridge proposed an activity, we identified a problem, and then we came up with a satisfactory mitigation method. In the case of superior aggregates, the baseline studies for species at risk have not been updated in 15 years. And based on the studies that were completed by NextBridge in 2018, there's most likely somewhere in the order of 15 or 20 species at risk that could possibly occur on the superior aggregates land that we're discussing in this situation here. So we'll grind the gears a bit and switch over to fisheries management. As Alex mentioned, there's an active Aboriginal fishery within Michipicoten Bay, and that occurs in the spring for species such as walleye and yellow perch and long-nosed sucker and smelt. And then there's some fishing in the summer, but then there's also fishing in the autumn for things like lake whitefish and lake trout. And in addition, there's also fishing in the tributaries that drain in. So you have multiple uses of the water for fisheries. And then a third use of the water is that there's active aquaculture operation. Now, I've never been out to see the aquaculture operation, so I'm not going to really talk about it in any detail other than to identify the presence of it in the bay, which requires high quality water for maintaining the fish and this sort of thing. And it's not been contemplated in the proposal by superior aggregates. It's never even been mentioned. And so within this context, DST did conduct a fishery study which supported the original application, which was dated January 6, 2004. And this study was reviewed, which was, the slide just popped forward there, but this particular study by DST in 2004 contemplated the fish in the bay. And so the way they did that contemplation was by having conversations with M&R biologists in the Wawa office, as well as reviewing the literature, and then thirdly, standing on the shoreline and looking out on the water. There was no in-water fish habitat mapping, or there's no fish population survey. So that fisheries assessment from 2004 was deemed satisfactory to support the aggregate license, and then the corresponding decision within the Ontario Municipal Board said that that was acceptable at that time. Since 2004, 2005, the Fisheries Act has changed. The Lakes and Rivers Improvement Act has been actively used more often. And thirdly, there's an element of species wildlife conservation, and so this has not been contemplated at all in the current application. And the slides have jumped forward, but one of the things that Alex did mention was that there's a fisheries infraction because of blasting, which obstructed one of the tributary creeks, and the fish populations were harmed, and so the Department of Fisheries and Oceans issued a fine and rehabilitation requirements. And then when I did my literature review, I found out that the owners of superior aggregates were also fined under the Fisheries Act for similar activities in the past. And so there appears to be the concern about appropriate fisheries management with this application. And I guess since we're on the summary and conclusion slide, I should throw it back to either John, Kim, or Alex. I'm not sure who's speaking now.
Thanks, Dean. I'll take it from here. So just to...
But Alex, I think we've already gone over, but with the approval of council, I think it's been going on for many years, so we can find 2 more minutes to hear the rest of your presentation, and I'll provide the same accommodation to superior aggregates as well if you need more time.
Thank you. That's
Go ahead,
very gracious of you. Should I do anything to the mic? Okay. So just in summary, we would like to remind council that the OMB presents a conditional approval, and it's subject to the completion of 4 studies listed above. Applications for site plan and the hold to be lifted are incomplete, and therefore the plan should not be approved and the hold not lifted. The absence of the 4 studies, mostly dealing with water quality and quantity and the contamination of Lake Superior, means that the true impacts of the proposed activities are not known. Superior aggregates must complete adequate species at risk screening and resultant mitigation, compensation related to the impacts of the proposed development. Now, moving forward, as I referenced earlier, we understand that Wawa has an impending official plan review, and we would like to collaborate fully on developing a consultation process, as I have discussed with Ms. O'Neill on the phone, for that purpose. We would like Wawa and to be a part of further defining the vision for Michipicoten Harbor area. We all know in our conversations, certainly with our conversations with Superior Aggregate, their interest is not only in aggregates. They see this as an opportunity for shipping and receiving more generally, and there is no policy framework guiding this development to date. Neither was it considered in the OMB decision, nor is it contemplated in the Michipicoten Harbor Special Policy Overlay area. We think that it would be best for Wawa to develop a secondary plan for the Michipicoten Harbor Wharf area, and we would be happy to collaborate in that process. Thank you very much for your time and for extending that time. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I would like now to invite the representatives from Superior Aggregates Company to provide their presentation. As I mentioned just earlier, if you require a bit more than 20 minutes, we'd be more than happy to accommodate. So in person tonight is Mr. Ramoni and Chief Gauthier. Thank you. Sit down, or is it clear? Yeah.
I was trying to help with the microphone. Oh, we can't get them to run.
I want to reiterate what we're all here for, is taking the hold off our dock facility. As our neighboring people talked about our aggregate operation through the whole conversation. We're not here for that. All we're looking for is to take the hold off in the site plan for the dock facility. We're not here to discuss the aggregate operation because that's already been through the OMB here and it's been approved in 2009. There's been 16 studies done on it. All the studies were approved. There was amendments to the study over the years as we start our aggregate operation, which we will put in place. And as we're just here to amend the hold off the property. So like we want to upgrade the property with the dock facility, the office, the shops, the living quarters, and we need building permits for that. And with the hold right now, we can't get any building permits. So that's what we've been looking to do. So, whatever the neighbors say, we will try to accommodate them the best way we can. And like I say, there was a study done on the fish, there was a study on for SARS, which I already contacted them, and they'll do an evaluation on it. I kind of like, we did give the drop boxes to Michipicoten on all the jobs back in 2016 when we were about to buy the property. This is the first time we approached council in Wawa. We had probably 20 to 25 meetings with Michipicoten and their representatives from 2016 up to now. So it's not like we've been in the consultations been with them. So, we're trying to be as good as neighbor as possible, and and we thought before we even purchased the property that they did say that they blessed us what we were doing. We did have even discussions with them on buying part of the company, which we have been discussions for 2 years. And then I do think the person would have come and said the DFO fined and we got fined in this. I like the fact should be true that we have DFO was never involved with us, and I don't know where he's getting that information, but it's not correct. And I do think if they're going to come here and tell you something, they should come with the correct facts. So I expect a apology from that. Both from all of us.
Well,
There was no fines. Then we got them noticed by the M&R. We resolved the problem in a week, and that was it. There's nothing else. So if you're gonna come and say something like that, you should come with the true facts. So I would like to have an apology for that too. So again, we're gonna go back to the hold on. And we're in the aggregate business, and we're gonna ship aggregate by water. Right now, we do have a permit to do that. What we're all here for is to take the hold off the zone. That's what this is all about. The aggregate operation is already approved, and we are proceeding with aggregate operation. So I'm gonna get that sorted out. And we will proceed shortly, which we already did the drilling and blasting last year. And all we're here for is the hole to come off the property. And then the next thing is, if you wanted to come and visit the site and everything, we will shut the site off right up to Mr. Cotton Road. The gate will be closed, and it'll be closed to all our operations. If anyone wants to have access, we'll let it, but you gotta be kind to come in. We're closing off to all private people. Okay, that's the next step. There is on the water study, there's amendments to our permit, and we are proceeding on getting engineers to do that. There's monitored now wells all over the property that was drilled, and there wasn't samples being taken, and we will give that to the municipality. The thing on the other study, that was done on the asset, and that's been approved by the OMB. So the only outstanding thing is the water monitoring that's gonna be done in the next month. And then the other one that we need to do that depends on for our license would be a noise. After 2 months in crushing, we have to do a noise study. And that, and we will follow our aggregate permit by the law. Whatever the OMB told us to do, that's what we're gonna do. We're not gonna try to cheat or, we have a fish study, we don't want to kill any fish either. So, we want to try to run a legitimate business for ourselves. We think the dock facility could be a benefit for everyone in Northern Ontario. It'll give us access to the whole world from Walmart when the dock is in business. And that's all we got to say.
Thank you, Mr. Renee.
Chief Coche? Chief Coche?
Yes.
You have to clean this area off.
What?
I'm gonna do it professional.
I'm sure you're doing much with them, so.
I don't know, you know, anything, so we're good. First, I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk. I want to acknowledge Chief Candy. Thank you for in acknowledging the traditional territory of Mishkwat First Nation. So I have a few points that I've brought with me. The rezoning and amendments of the official plan and applications for the issuance of an aggregate resources permit for the planned SAC Trap Rock Quarry project were approved after 16 studies and the review of such studies by the M&R, MOE, and multiple experts who gave testimony at the OMB hearing, which lasted 16 days. Mishkwat First Nation was consulted and supported the project. SAC will continue to do everything it has to do to be compliant with the OMB decision. The official plan and zoning bylaw was amended by the OMB decision. The ARA permit and any laws which SAC is subject to. SAC's operation plans have not changed. No changes to roads such as roads which Mishkwat First Nation members use to access their residences. No additional buildings, no capital repairs to the wharf dock are currently planned. Such future development requires additional studies and planning and if and when SAC is ready to proceed, an amended site plan will be applied for after the appropriate studies. Use of the dock to transport aggregates products can take place without capital repairs to the wharf. As referenced in the OMB order, mining activity along with the shores of Lake Superior is not new and occurred even before European explorers traveled the Lake Superior shores. SAC wants to be a good neighbor and has consulted with Mishpawt First Nation. Any objections to the site plan application should not be rehearing of SAC's proposed project. The OMD hearing covered the objections and made its favorable ruling. Any changes in law with SAC must follow, it will, but new conditions cannot be imposed by SAC's neighbors that was dealt with at the hearing. SAC's operations are governed by the ARA permit, which does not allow blasting operations during night nor weekends, and crushing and screening operations situated in the contained area. The OMB decided SAC could proceed and is now in a position to do so in a careful and respectful manner. Thank you.
Thank you. As I mentioned at the beginning tonight, with the opportunity to
This is John Kimbell. May I pose a few questions?
No, we're not discussing this right now. It's just the two presentations.
This is John Kimbell. May I pose a few questions?
No, we're not. So what I did want to do is, as I mentioned, council ourselves are not going to be debating this tonight, but if there are any questions for clarification that a councillor wishes to pose to either party to clarify a comment, I'll entertain any question. Otherwise, we will take this information, work with our CEO and our consultant as well. So, was there any questions to clarify anything by anyone? So just to, for the continued process, we will be gathering all of the information from this evening. We'll be working.
Yes, I have a question. If you're asking if there are questions, I have a question.
I was asking council if they had a question. The whole purpose of the delegation is to have the presentation, but I don't want to get into battering back and forth between the two parties. That wasn't the point of tonight's meeting and the delegation presentations. Mr. Bell, if you wish to direct your question directly to whoever it is, but do it outside of this meeting. So if there are no questions, that will end this section of the meeting. And again, I thank you, and we will be in touch. We will take our time to make sure that we thoroughly investigate everything, and we will make all our information. We'll make the decision based on what is being asked of us at this particular time. Okay, and now I also want to note that we had 3 other additional written submissions, and those submissions will be, we're not going to read them out tonight, but they will be put into the minutes and available for people to read once we post our minutes of the meeting, and they will also be forwarded to both staff at all at copies, and the planner that we have hired will also be getting all of that information as well. So we are now going to move to item 5, the adoption of minutes of the corporate planning meeting from Tuesday, August 11th. Thank you. I realize you have places to go. Thank you. Do we need a mover to that? A mover moved by Mitch. All in favor? Gary, Bill's back there on my left. Thank you. There's no business arising out of the meeting. Under new business, 7.1, Alex, report for the month of August 2020. We want to just briefly comment, Alex, on any highlights with regards to report.
Sure, I'll comment just briefly so we can get into the next one.
Yes.
So a couple basic updates. First one on the waterfront project. Most of you have probably seen the new signage that went up. There's a little bit more coming as well on the wayfinding and highway signage, but that was the start of it. We're hoping to see that installed quite shortly. Additionally, we finalized details to complete the landscaping along the swales, so that'll happen very soon too. And of course, everything is very butted up against the September 31st deadline.
Is your speaker working now?
No, it isn't.
It's mine is on.
Alex, are we gonna update some of the, updates on the old signage? Like, we still got one for,
Mine was
Wayne
on.
Petty, not Wayne Petty, for, Valley Park. It's there that, people approach me and ask if we're gonna, like, take that sign down.
Yeah. So some
For it, it's on the, directed to the areas which are no longer available.
So some of the signage we need to go and take down ourselves, you're absolutely right. Others will be updated with a new sign in replacement of the older sign, yes. Working, not working? I don't think it is. That's okay. I'll just talk a little
You have to speak a little louder, sorry.
Yeah, no
They're
problem.
turning off and on.
Okay, other things that I'll get into, just a little bit of an update on, I guess, we continue to do our normal COVID-19 activities that we've been doing. So they're mostly hosting a weekly community organization roundtable to get feedback from other organizations and to try and gather everybody around to make sure that everybody has the help that they need essentially to work through the emergency. That's been relatively effective over the last couple of months, specifically as individual organizations may face a problem that the group can help them solve collectively. And it's been a good sounding board for us as the municipality as we've faced some of our issues this season to really get some feedback from those other organizations about how we might fix those. And then in September, we're basically looking at finishing up some of the capital projects, looking at preparing things for the fall shutdown, and we did some of those things earlier, as well as potentially prepare the community center for reopening, depending on what council decides tonight. Any questions?
Okay. I just want to comment, Alex, on the signage that was put up along the Wall Lake waterfront. Just really beautiful. Really want to commend you and your staff for the work in designing that and having it available in the 3 languages. They look really great.
Thanks.
Alex, could I ask a question?
Certainly can, but I think make sure your mic's on.
Oh, I guess it's not working.
They're not working. I
Can you
don't
hear
know
me
why.
out?
Yes, I can hear you.
Please pass on to your staff. I really appreciate the garbage pickup along the lake, with 10 to 15 campers there every night. Like every time I go in the morning, there's tons of garbage. But you tell them to do a very good job.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a really interesting year. We did not expect that volume of travelers in the community at the start of the season, for sure.
They were there every night.
Okay, thank you, Alex. We want to move to 7.2, something we've been waiting for, some reopening plans for Mr. Scott Memorial Community Center.
Okay, so I've given council quite a large document. It's in 3 versions. So essentially what I want to get across is the high level of that. And then if you have any specific questions, I'll take them afterwards, if that's okay. So at the highest level of this, we made this plan in 3 phases, and those 3 phases were essentially identify what all of the recommendations would be, and that formed version 1 of the report. The second version was to take all of those recommendations that we identified and make them into specific procedures for the community center, which became version 2 of the report. And then version 3 of the report was to take those specific procedures and look at how we operate the facility as a whole to make sure that we're scheduling the facility appropriately to make all of the demands of the community center happen essentially at the same time. So how we did that was we took a couple weeks and really reviewed a lot of the documentation that was coming out, and that documentation was coming from several sources. So we had things from Hockey Canada, we had things from Skate Ontario, Curling Ontario, several certifying bodies is what I called them in the report, who basically gave us what they're giving their membership. They also provided to municipalities. And there was several commonalities in between a lot of that documentation. It was also backed up by recommendations from Algoma Public Health and our certifying body, which is the Ontario Recreation Facilities Association. So in all of those documents, you essentially came up with a whole list of recommendations, but those documents were sometimes 15, 20, 30, 40 pages. Some of the documents had things in it about staying in hotels and other things that didn't apply to the arena. So when we broke all of those down, we ended up getting about 25 pages of recommendations specific to the arena. In taking those recommendations, we spoke with all of the staff at the community center, and we're going to apply those recommendations specifically to the community center. And so what we came up with was to have 4 sections of the community center, essentially based on the activities that they support. So one of the sections was the arena, and that would support all of the ice activities, so figure skating, public skating, hockey, etc. Another section was the curling rink, which supports curling activities, of course. A third section is the special function rooms, and they traditionally support a combination of recreation programming, seniors programming, as well as special events and private bookings. And then the last section was the dance and fitness and gym areas, and that traditionally supports very specific recreation programming, dance, some of our adult fitness classes, seniors fitness classes, and then of course the use of the gym. So in breaking the facility into those 4 sections, we were able to then look at what was required in each of those 4 sections, and it came out to be quite similar. So all of the things that you would normally hear Algoma Public Health say, masks, wash your hands, et cetera, those could be applied universally to all of the sections, but then you had some specific differences in each section as well, because some sections are cold, some sections are warm, some sections host different types of activities. So in creating the plan, version 1, we didn't do a lot of consultation on, because of course it's just pulling recommendations. Version 2, which is what we sent out to the user groups in mid-August, was, okay, here's how we're specifically applying these recommendations to the community center. We're interested in your feedback. And we got 5 or 6 good pieces of information from folks who also know and have used the building for a long time. And a lot of those we ended up applying to the final version of the plan. We also had a couple specific changes as soon as that plan came out. So like as an example, Algoma Public Health required that the building only fit 50 people at any given time. 2 days after the plan came out, they changed that to be based on the sizes of the rooms. So all throughout this plan, we've also had to incorporate changes as they've come. In the plan itself, we've identified the procedures, and then we've looked at how to schedule the facility. And you can see in an example in version 3 how we have scheduled the facility, which has essentially been based on blocks of cleaning instead of blocks of usage. So where traditionally we'd schedule the facility based on, okay, you know what, if you're in here from 7 o'clock until 8 o'clock, then you can be in here from 8 o'clock till 9 o'clock. Everything's been back to back according to room usage. Now we're scheduling the facility based on the blocks of time we feel we need to sanitize the areas appropriately. And now we're scheduling those sanitizing blocks as the limit of the facility. So what that's done is it's essentially made the facility, if we have 10 operating hours, we may only actually be able to use 5 of them for programming. And I've listed a couple examples in the report specifically. But generally what that'll mean on the high end side of things is there's going to be a loss in revenue. So getting into the financials of it, because the facility has been shut down for such a long time, we don't expect to go over in our budget for maintenance, cleaning supplies, things like that. Because yes, while we're going to be using a lot more over the course of the next couple months until the budget runs out on the 31st of December, we haven't used those supplies for the whole summer and a good chunk of the spring where we normally would have. So it's our best estimation, and it's tough to really truly predict, but it's our best estimation that we're going to be safe on the expenses side. On the revenue side, it's going to be a different story. So obviously, we did lose a chunk of revenue in the first place when we shut down in March, because traditionally we would operate until usually mid-April on a full recreation schedule in different ways, shapes, and forms. We lost that revenue. We lost all the summertime revenue as well. So we had 3 or 4 weddings booked, 3 or 4 other special events. We always get pop-up things, funerals, anything you can name. It traditionally fills almost every weekend of the summer over the last couple of years. That was all gone this year. So you can see in the financial section, essentially what we've done is we've tried our best to break out the revenues as much as possible because there's more knowns in that area. The expenses are a little bit less known, so I didn't go into so much detail, but I'm also obviously less worried about them because I predict it will be within our budget numbers. So what it ended up being is, and this is again, it's really tough to say this is a projection based on the current situation today. Things could radically change as soon as tomorrow, but it's the best we can do to plan, right? So we're essentially projecting a total revenue loss of about $36,000 over the fall and a total revenue loss of the budget year of about $46,000 to $50,000. So those are the numbers that we're dealing with. We do have ways to offset those on the expense side. I've delved a little bit into the finance business, but honestly, some of it is going to be wait and see. One example is in electricity usage. So we had a net positive impact from shutting down in the springtime so early because we dropped the compressors right away. It was getting warm out, and that's traditionally our higher use period. So based on the usage today, I'm expecting roughly a $20,000 savings in there, depending on how the rest of the season plans out, how many heating cooling days we have, things like that. So a full assessment isn't really going to be possible until we get a little bit further into things. But as of now, this is what I tried to do as a worst case scenario, understanding of the financial side of things. In terms of other aspects, we've scheduled things based on the existing staff complement. We've done a lot of work as a staff to change schedules, to figure out how we can most safely do things. And what we've taken is primarily a very conservative approach. So if we've said, okay, you know what, we think it'll take about 20 minutes to sanitize a particular area, well, we're going to budget half an hour at the start to make sure that we've got it covered off, because we can always reduce the amount of cleaning time and open up more programming time, but it'll be much more difficult to have to cancel something because we didn't get it right in the first place. So the plan in front of you, and specifically, what we're proposing as staff, has taken a very conservative approach to it, but it's also taken an approach that understands that it's going to have to change, and it could change for the better or it could change for the worse, but no matter what, this is going to be a changing process. So part of why we've asked council for a little bit of flexibility as staff is to accommodate for those changes. Those changes might not happen on a schedule that's conducive with council meetings. So not only have we recommended to reopen the facility based on the reopening plan, but we've asked council to allow us staff to be able to tweak that plan as required to correspond with the latest changes and recommendations and what we're hearing from Algoma Public Health and all of the certifying bodies, to essentially make sure that we don't have to come back to council every single time we need to change something, operationally, but we will of course have to come back to council for some of the major service level changes, such as if we happen to face another closure. I think the only other thing I have to say about it before I'll take questions is we have identified some specific risks. We've talked with our insurance companies. We've put a lot of research and effort into a plan like this, and there's a lot of things that we could try our best to mitigate, but there's a whole ton that we can't. One of the bigger risks that we've evaluated a lot as staff is the risk of going through all the effort to put ice surfaces in and then being canceled before or shortly after the ice season really starts. And then we're going to have to do an evaluation as staff, whether or not we actually keep the ice or what that really looks like. So a lot of those things are going to be touch and go. I think it's the nature of the beast, but we still believe that we have a solid plan in place to mitigate and make sure that we really have everything in place that we possibly can for public safety and for the safety of the staff at the community center, with a really good understanding that it'll have to change as the situation evolves.
What is the prediction of public, and again, how much public would respond to?
Based on what I've heard from user groups, it's a good mix. Most user groups have the same amount of people interested, though a lot of user groups haven't done the actual registration process yet. The public in general, I think, is a tougher pick, because what we've done so far is we've focused on youth recreation, and that's what we'd like to start up first, and then move to seniors, and then move to adult. So far, what I'm seeing is in the youth recreational world, we're not getting the same volume of bookings, but we actually can't afford to have the same volume of bookings because we need that cleaning space. In the seniors world, which is the next thing on our radar after we integrate youth, it's being reported to us by some of our partners, like the Walla Family Health Team, that there's a great deal of demand because that type of interaction for seniors in particular has been really lacking this summer. So we expect to see a similar volume as what we're used to for seniors. And then for adults, I think the limiting factor is honestly going to be how much staff capacity we have once we've met the needs of youth and the needs of seniors to slot in that additional programming. And that's going to be, I can't have an answer right now, I just don't know.
Alex, when you talked about numbers, one report said 50, now you're saying you evaluate the total number of people per room, depending on the size of the room. And you also mentioned in your report that you're talking about having different entrances and exits. So how do you keep track of how many people are actually in the building when, or are you talking about just allowing in those users? Or what about people who want to come in and watch their kids practice hockey or watch a curling game, etc.? How are you going to manage that?
Yeah. So it's a really good question. It's something that we actually did as an exercise today as staff, is to try and calculate how many people can be in each section. So it's up to us as the owners of the facility to set a limit now on each section. It can't be more than 50, but sometimes it'll have to be less based on the size of the section and the size of the rooms in that section. So we're looking at capacities because we've got a fairly large facility, like for example, the banquet hall can technically accommodate more than 50 social distancing, especially when it's paired with the lobby and other sections. We have to still set it at 50 because that's the Algoma public health rules, but it could do more. When we police that sort of thing, this is where this plan only works with a partnership with all of the user groups. So for municipal programming, the people who do municipal programming, such as like a fitness instructor, is going to have to make sure that they have an attendance list, they screen everybody, and they're going to have to basically take attendance and make sure it does not go over. Those are the only people that are going to be allowed in that section at any given time. Each of the user groups, we're asking them to do the same. So they're going to be required to police each section that they have rented out. So for example, in the case of hockey, if they have a limit of 45, then they're going to have to be at the door, be signing everybody in, be screening everybody, and they're not going to be allowed to let more than 45 in. How they exactly do that, we've left up to each user group because each user group is very different, and even subsections of groups. Like you can imagine, Timbits hockey is going to have a lot more parents who want to be there than Bantams and Midgets. So you basically have to put it to each user group to say, these are our expectations. This is what we've set as the rules in our facility, and we need to make sure that we follow them, which means you guys need to help us make that happen, right? We've had a lot of conversations with user groups about how that's going to work, and most user groups, again, they have recommendations from their certifying body, right? So minor hockey has recommendations from Hockey Canada that they're expected to follow. Figure skating has recommendations from Skate Ontario. The things that we're putting to them are their own recommendations. Like these are rules that they would have to be followed regardless of what I write in our plan. We're just reinforcing it in our plan. I think the other thing to add is that this plan is now becoming one of the conditions of use of the community center. So if you want to use the facility, you need to sign off on a plan, and you need to acknowledge that you have certain responsibilities in keeping everybody safe just as much as we do as a municipality, and we move forward that way.
So I heard something just before the meeting about bubbles with other communities. So will there be organized hockey games between Wawa, Shapiro, Wawa, Riverville?
So this is as far as I understand it. I'm not part of the NEOHA. I'm just a facility program. As far as I understand, it has created a bubble between three communities, ourselves, Shapiro, and Newberville. And so in the recommendations from the provincial government and the mandates from Algoma Public Health, they've said that if you were to create a league, that league can have a maximum of 50 persons in it. They don't have geographical limits or anything like that. What I've not had is a request from minor hockey to say, yes, we'd like to have games, we'd like to have people travel. So I don't think I wouldn't want to say right now, yes or no. I would entertain that request when it comes up based on the conditions at the time. I don't foresee that happening in the near future. And so even if that request was a month or a month and a half out, things would probably change enough by then that we'd have to look at a new set of rules.
So certainly if that does happen, I think some kind of accommodation or certainly a lot of planning will have to be done, because if you're going to travel all the way from Sheffield with your child to hockey, you don't want to be told, well, go to Tim Hortons because there's already 49 or 50 people in the building.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And that's what reinforces this plan isn't a municipal plan that we just follow. This plan is for the facility. So it applies to us just as much as it applies to every user in the facility. That partnership is always critical to the operation of a recreation facility, but it's especially critical now because we absolutely need everybody on board to make this happen safely. And if it starts, we're going to have to be in a position to stop that. So it's in everybody's best interest in the whole community to make sure that this happens properly.
That's your question, and that curler asked me, is the bar going to be open?
Great question. So based on the priorities we've set ourselves youth recreation as a first priority, seniors recreation as a second priority, and then adult recreation as the third priority. The last priority or the fourth priority would be commercial and special events. For me, the canteen and the bar both are commercial operations. So how I've explained it to folks is this. We have X amount of staffing, we have X amount of time that we have to do everything properly. If I were to open the bar, that takes a chunk of time for us to make sure that is done properly, sanitize the whole 9 yards. So I don't want to say no, but it is lower on the priority list than youth and seniors and adult recreation. So if we have the capacity, once we've gone through those priorities, then yes. If we do not, then no.
I think, the social aspect of curling is extremely important, and it's that half hour, an hour, we sit around and chat afterwards and have a refreshment. That's important to a lot of people. So it's certainly a decision that they're hoping we make prior to all of those leagues trying to get together. So, yeah, I'm sure if he's looking for it. The other question with regards to, I know you're waiting for a piece of equipment in order to be able to start making the ice. So I'm sure you're watching the news every day just to see whether or not there'll be a second lockdown. But once we make the ice, and if there is a lockdown early in the year, do you anticipate basically trying to just keep it in to see if after 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks the lockdown will be lifted? If we've already gone to the expense of putting in the ice, turn the lights off, lock the door, turn the heat off, and keep the ice going.
It's going to be a really difficult call to make if that happens, because there's a certain point. It's a tough number. It's impossible to calculate beforehand because it depends on so many factors like the outside temperature, what the right decision to be is. But in our estimation, I think the first step we do as staff is do an evaluation and see if anybody can tell us, or if we can look at historical data, how long it could potentially last. It's the biggest risk right now in terms of the finances of the building is to install ice and then not be able to use it, not be able to generate revenue from it. I'll be honest, I don't have all the answers.
Do you have any of your professional recreation organizations send you daily updates saying, maybe you guys should wait, don't put it in right now, we recommend you start a little later, or things are, cases are going up, something like that?
Yeah.
What are you hearing?
The ORFA hasn't said anything like that to us. Lots of members are asking the same question. Lots of members are explaining their logic. Lots of members don't have the answer either. The latest from the premier, there was a recommendation to not restart things, and folks are considering that, which makes us super nervous. lacking a glycol pump right now is almost a blessing in disguise, because whether we like it or not, we can't install ice without that piece. And it buys us a little bit of time to reevaluate before we flip the switch. So Maury and I have had that discussion. There's definitely going to be a reevaluation, and we may have to come back to council if it's too risky. But at the end of the day, it's a really difficult call to make. And if we do get shut down, it'll be an even more difficult call to make to decide whether to pull the ice out or not. And it's going to be extremely situational. I couldn't say today, yes, we'll pull or no, we'll not. It's going to really depend on what we're into.
And also the premier is looking at not shutting the province down completely. They're talking about the areas, like if an area is good, not shut it down because it's, you know.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think there's some hope that if a regional approach is taken, we'll be safe. I think the original approach when, and this is just me, I'm not an expert or a doctor or anything, when the original approach was taken, it was a bit of a panic. It would shut the whole province down. Most of the things they've done since have been with a regional approach by each health unit. And so I think in Algoma, we're really, really lucky. We're one of the safer health units. So it's a lower risk than it would be if we were in Peel or Ottawa, but it's still a definite risk that we're taking. If we install the ice, once we start that plant up, there's a very small window before there's kind of no going back, and we've hit that expense. So it's very situational.
Okay.
Real quick, Alex, how many fans could be in the arena? Could they be different spots, different numbers?
So right now, we've decided not to open the stands.
Okay.
Again, the idea is we have to prioritize what we do as staff. And so it was a priority between, do we have the extra time to sanitize the stands appropriately, or do we use that extra time to operate another area of the facility? There is the option for folks to stand on what we as staff call the header trench, which is the front of the arena, because we can't give that a quick wipe down, right? It is the coldest spot in the arena, so I don't know how
Those
many
are
people
going to stand there.
are going to take their trench up.
My second question, I was thinking, you said about a bubble with chapeau that hockey's thinking about, right? Why couldn't we have a bubble for curling? There's only about 50 curlers there now.
Yeah, it's possible. So like, for example, curling league play would totally be fine because the league is only 50 people, right? So the province of Ontario has said your leagues are limited to 50 people right now. So that would be totally fine, right? So all of the curling fits within that definition. Really what they're trying to do is they're trying to have as little cross-contamination as possible. And that's the same principle that we've applied in our plan.
But you're gonna have to open up the stands anyways because everybody has to walk to the benches, all the coaches. Like that's gonna be non-stop traffic. The referees have to go to the back. And the timekeepers have to go down the other side of the ring. For that, it's gonna be contaminated.
Yeah, so it's what we basically said is we want to just open up the home bench for now, and we want folks to skate out there essentially. So I haven't received any super negative feedback on that so far, but I also think that like minor hockey hasn't fully gotten back to us on what specifically they're looking at, because the people I'm going to hear that from, we talked a lot about scheduling, right? So the people I'm going to hear that from is the coaches and the parents and things like that, right? So I'm not saying no, it's just lower on the priority list for us. If we can fit it in to make sure we can sanitize everything properly, great. You know, with our current facility schedule, could we fit it in? Probably, right? We have to really get into things, make sure we can accommodate seniors and adults, and then we start opening up some of that stuff. The point right now and the whole start of this process is to get kids out and moving. So we're trying to basically focus on that little narrow window and then open it up as we get into things, as we make sure things are working properly and safely, then we can start really opening the rest of the facility up as best we can.
If you ever had a meeting, Alex, with all the users or something, I would be interested to go, just so I could understand it better.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Alex? Alex, certainly we do get it up and running. One of the things I've appreciated in your monthly report is if you look at your projections and you actually give us the actuals, the number of people using it, revenues, et cetera, and expenses. So so we can look at that on a monthly basis as we go forward into the winter.
Happy to do that, yeah.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I know it's been a lot of work, a lot of different ways of looking at how we used to do things and how we have to do them differently today. So I want to thank you and thank your staff for the dedication of making sure, number one, that we can open and that we can open safely. And I know this past summer, your efforts of your staff to have the marina operating and the Michigan Golf Course operating, those are two areas that provided quite a bit of recreation for people who certainly needed it after being locked down for a few months through the spring. So, and I think we're looking at the community center in the same way to get us through the winter months. A lot of people use it for many different reasons, and if we work together to keep our area safe and our community safe and our facilities safe, we'll have a good winter. So thanks again.
Thanks.
We move to item 7.3, where you're looking at a revised policy of code of conduct. So you have the draft in front of you. Clerk has been working on this. Kathy, did you want to comment on some of the changes you're proposing? Or Maury, I'm not sure.
I may look to Maury as well for some comments as well. So I worked with the CAO and the Integrity Commissioner to revise and update our current code of conduct policy to streamline and clearly define the procedures for investigations on complaints. So when a person has reasonable grounds to believe that there is a breach of the code of conduct, the complainant would submit their complaint to the municipal clerk on the form that is prescribed by the municipality and pay the applicable filing fee. The filing fee is just a nominal fee, which would be subject to change through the adoption of the schedule of fees on an annual basis. The complainant would swear or affirm that they have personal knowledge of the facts and have reasonable grounds that the member contravened the code of conduct. The onus of proof as to the date of the discovery lies with the complainant. We are also, like I said, recommending the requirement of an individual to pay a nominal filing fee. Right now, there is no filing fees, so individuals can file complaints and we proceed with them investigating those complaints with without them having to pay. This filing fee would just basically cover our administrative costs. The limitation period has been added to this policy, where in the current one we don't have that. An inquiry that is older than 60 days will not be considered by the Integrity Commissioner. The Integrity Commissioner will attempt to settle any complaint between the complainant and the member prior to any inquiry occurring. The individuals will be encouraged to pursue an informal process whereby they would try to remedy the behavior activity that they believe violates the code of conduct with the violating member of council or committee. In the event the informal complaint cannot be resolved, then a formal complaint can be filed with the clerk and forwarded to the Integrity Commissioner. The Integrity Commissioner will determine if there's a procedure under other legislation to deal with the matter. So for example, if it falls under the Ontario Human Rights Code, then the Integrity Commissioner would refer that individual to deal with the Ontario Human Rights Commission. I think that pretty well covers everything in that policy that has changed. So what I'm recommending is that council accept my report and approve the revised code of conduct policy for council and board members. Was there anything else, Maury, that I missed?
No,
that was it.
Any questions?
I'm pretty sure I understand this, but I just want to make sure, Kathy. The person that's putting the complaint in, Do they have to give their name?
Yes.
That's one of the changes, I
Yes.
understand, yes. Okay, thank you, Kathy. So that'll be coming back to council probably in October.
Yes.
Thank you.
And if anyone has any recommended changes, I would ask them to contact me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next, regarding policy regarding notice. Again, Kathy, you want to speak to that?
Sure. So please bear with me. I prepared this policy back in May prior to being off for a little bit. So what I had done was I updated the current notice policy. And what I wanted to do is just try to simplify the policy and to provide clear direction to staff on the directions for giving public notice. So when you move over to the appendix 1 for the notice requirements, it indicates what section of the municipal act, what the subject matter is, the municipal act requirements, and then the requirements that we would use for the giving of notice to the public, whether it would be on our website, or if we're required to give notice in the newspaper, or prepaid mail to individuals. All the ones that are highlighted in orange are the new additions to our notice bylaw, and that's in accordance with the act. In our current policy, we did not have any reference to the Planning Act, and so what I did was just basically added a section that any policies that fall under the Planning Act, for example, official plans, zoning bylaw amendments, subdivisions, or consent applications, that staff would be required to follow the Planning Act and to refer to those sections of the Planning Act. And that's pretty much it.
Very good. And again, that will be coming back to council in October.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. I appreciate all the work that's being done on updating so many of our policies. We're just about looking at a couple every month, so that will help us get through the book in a hurry. So appreciate that. 7.5 letter regarding beachfront trading posts, water. Maureen, do you wish to speak to this?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And this letter was addressed to council from Beachfront Trading Post. Basically, the fish bait portion of the business is on municipal water, which will see the business water charges and costs rise substantially now that on September 1st, the municipality has moved to a water meter rate system. The proponent, we have been in conversations for over a year on the need for the owner to make adjustments to the use of water, municipal water on the business. The owner has recently advised that they have tried to make effort to drill a well and try to feed the minnow bait system off a well. They've been working on that for a while. COVID did interrupt their construction of a new well, but they have proceeded again, and today advised us that they are proceeding with the well. It's a difficult request that's being made of council. You're being asked to waive or change water fees. The new water rate system that we had several public meetings about, to which this business attended. People knew for over a year that the system was being changed on September 1st. But we also understand as staff and a community that the rates are going to impact some residents and some businesses harder than others. So having said that, it's a difficult position for staff to be in to recommend to council at this time on this request that any waiver of fees be initiated. But I would now ask council, and I believe the business would be very supportive if you would provide staff the opportunity to come back to council on October 6th with a more full recommendation to council. And the reason I'm asking for the slight delay is that the owner had called today to say some things were moving a little more quickly on the well. So I need to confirm that that's absolutely not an option for the business owner, this year. And once I get more background to the matter, I'll bring a recommendation forward to council at the next meeting.
Thank you. Yes.
Did you do the comparison from previous to what the current rate will be?
Yes, we did. It's a substantial increase.
Is that accurate?
That is very close.
So one of the things that we realized when we started using our meters this September, when we worked on building the water treatment plant, the average usage per person in the well was over 900 cubic meters it is significant. The numbers were so great in comparison to other parts of the province. And a lot of it was areas that were using up a lot of water. It wasn't necessarily that it was individuals. Like we had one particular business that had coolers, and the water would just flow through the coolers, and it wasn't looped, and it would just go straight through and then out into the wastewater system. So there were a lot of places where water was being wasted, and some of the businesses, like this particular businesses, there were individuals in the community that actually had wells, and then they had the business. And the reason that they wanted wells at the time was to keep chloride out of the water so it wouldn't kill the minnows. And when we did the groundwater study around 2003, it identified in Wawa all the residences that had wells, and there was a significant number of them. But the other thing that they also learned from that is you would think that in our area that you would access water just after a few feet, but it's quite deep. You have to go quite deep and a lot of drilling in order to get to it. So it's important to look at. It's one of these changes that needs to be made, and we'll try as much as possible to work something out for the business. So in that report. Thank you. There is no in-camera session, no business arising, obviously, and our next meeting date is October 6th, I believe. Okay. Sure, we will, as soon as we adjourn. Move to adjourn. Moved by Mitch, all in favor. We'll adjourn, and we'll give people a little break before we start our second of 3 meetings tonight.
Not gonna go down. Get my screen to go down anymore. Here we go. Sorry.
There's in there in the different merit of speech.
Bear with me. Just bear with me.
process.
Good job.
Thanks. Process to put that together.
Where is it? Takes me a minute to get this stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, big time.
That was,
Yeah, that's what the committee is for, right? So basically, like, each section has its activity. Has its own hallway. It's got its own.
what date did that go? August 18th?
So basically, we're segregating everybody into their own washroom. And then that block of time we need in between. We're expecting like, because we're not going to see such washers, for example, we're not gonna have every stall. We're gonna have to go in and sanitize like
So,
2-6.
or publish by any means,
So
publish.
I think it's gonna be really tough this year.
Or publish by any means.
And
So we'll
now
correct it.
Yeah,
and put it
okay.
it's gonna be like this hangout area.
Means directly or indirectly
Yeah, or indirectly to any person.
to any person or to the public.
Yep, any confidential information acquired by virtue of his or her office.
Right now, it's
Is that you?
Call the meeting to order at 8:09.
What?
Need disclosure of pecuniary interest.
I, Councilor Robert Reese, declare potential deemed pecuniary interest on agenda item 12.4, bylaw 3338-20.
Thank you. Approval of the agenda, we have a resolution. Oh, we're still having resolutions, okay.
Please, Kirby.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I'm ready.
So we have the resolution to my mic's up.
No, it's on.
Try again, it should be on.
Okay. I guess I'm really gonna have to speak loud until this comes back. It decides to. So, approval of the agenda.
Mine's working. Moved by Councillor Tate, seconded by Councillor Hatfield. Resolved that the agenda for the regular meeting of council scheduled for Tuesday, September 15th be approved as amended.
All in favor? Carried. There are no delegations or presentations, announcements, and giving of notice. We have 3 notices there as we do look at that. Item number 6, adoption of minutes from the regular council meeting of August 11th and special council meeting August 18th. We have a resolution.
Moved by Councillor Hatfield, seconded by Councillor Tate. Resolved that the following minutes of meetings of council be adopted as presented. Minutes of a regular meeting held on Tuesday, August 11, 2020 is contained on pages 1 to 7, inclusive of the minute book. Minutes of a special meeting of council held on Tuesday, August 18, 2020 as contained on pages 1 to 3, inclusive of the minute book.
All in favor? Carried. Consent agenda, we have a resolution.
Moved by Councillor Tate, seconded by Councillor Hatfield. Resolved that the items listed under consent agenda, items 7.2 to 7.5, be approved as recommended.
All in favor? Carried, thank you. Item 8, staff reports. Resolution to receive the staff reports.
Moved by Councillor Chiasson, seconded by Councillor Reese. Resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Wellwood does hereby receive the following reports, a copy of which are attached here to A, AP 2020-11 report for the month of August 2020, B, AP 2020-12 reopening plan for the community center, C, CC 2020-02 revised policy code of conduct.
Questions? All in favor? Carried, thank you. Number 9, business arising out of the previous meeting, corrective actions, integrity commissioner report, code of conduct complaint. And I will be reading a letter addressed to Councillor Hatfield, read letter reprimand, code of conduct complaint, report number 2. The purpose of this letter is to provide a written reprimand concerning your conduct on April 29, 2020. Municipal Council concluded that your conduct violated the code of conduct for council and ward committee members, policy number HR 017, adopted by bylaw number 317319, specifically section 10, by disclosing confidential information. This determination was made following an assessment of the complainant and your statements and the evidence provided by the complainant. Council concurs with the Integrity Commissioner that you ought to have known your responsibility to uphold confidentiality as defined in the Code of Conduct, and such disclosure violates the principles of conduct based on the principle. In particular, the public is entitled to expect the highest standards of conduct from the members of its local government. Further, Council has a strong role to protect and promote municipality and its reputation. The Integrity Commissioner found that your disclosure of confidential information to a member of the public was a violation of section 10 of the Code of Conduct, more specifically section 11, which states, no member shall disclose, release, sell, or publish by any means directly or indirectly to any person or to the public any confidential information acquired by virtue of his or her office in any form, including but not limited to written notes, reports, oral or video recording, pictures, electronic correspondence, in any form of social media except when required or authorized by council or otherwise by law to do so. The municipality of Wawa is not only obligated but committed to safeguarding any information in its possession of or received in confidence by the municipality. The statements and behavior of council affects the municipality's reputation. Inappropriate conduct adversely affects the municipality and is to be avoided. Council of the municipality of Wawa have determined that your conduct warrants a written reprimand as stated herein is supported through the passage of resolution number SP 20019 dated August 18th, 2020, as recommended by the Integrity Commissioner, signed by Ron Rhodey, Bill Chasson, Robert Reese, and Pat Tate. And we will follow with a letter from Councillor Hatfield.
Thank you. Dear Honorable Mayor and council members, I would like to offer my sincerest apologies to my family, to mayor and council, municipal staff, and especially the residents of the municipality of Wawa. I have let down the people who put their faith in me, and I'll do everything in my power to learn from this regrettable mistake and to gain back that trust. On April 29th, 2020, I violated the Code of Conduct Policy HR 017 by disclosing confidential information. There is no excuse for my failure to live up to my duties and responsibilities as an elected official. Barack Obama once said, "You can't let your failures define you. You have to let your failures teach you." I have no one but myself to blame as I make amends with my fellow members of council, my constituents. I believe that it is possible to pick up oneself and achieve great things after a lapse in judgment. As always, I will continue to move forward in doing my best in the situation I am given. I hope you can forgive me for my lapse in professional judgment. I assure you it will not happen again.
Thank you. Moving to item 10, new business, 10.1, authorize allocation of Connecting Link project funds. We have a resolution.
Moved by Councillor Reese, seconded by Councillor Chasson. Whereas funds were to be budgeted in the 2021 capital budget for the Mission Road Highway 101 Connecting Link project, and whereas the project will be completed in 2020, now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation Municipality of Wawa does hereby authorize an additional $95,000 to be allocated to the Mission Road Highway 101 Connecting Link project, and further that the additional funds be taken from the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund to be spent in 2020.
Any questions? All in favor? It's carried. 10.2, accepts staff recommendation reopening of the Mishpachot Memorial Community Center resolution.
Moved by Councillor Hatfield, seconded by Councillor Tate, resolved that the Council of the Corporation Municipality of Wawa does hereby direct staff to reopen the Mishpachot Memorial Community Center by following the MMCC reopening plan as presented, and further that Council directs staff to review and modify the plan as necessary to ensure the safety of patrons to and users of the facility and return to council should any modifications affect the service levels presented therein, and further that council directs staff to install the arena ice surface as soon as practical, pending completion of repairs at the MMCC ice plant to conform with municipal policy number MM001 arena ice installation, and further that council directs the director to provide monthly updates on the number of users and the actual status of the director's financial projections.
Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Just on that matter, we had a confusion about announcement on the radio about the closing of the community center. Councillor Hatfield was speaking with Daniel, and they're still running the ad from the spring.
Yes.
Oh,
I've already addressed that with
so
Dave.
you've addressed it with
Yeah.
them? Okay.
Thank you.
So we don't have a date, but at least I can say that council has approved a reopening plan, and hopefully we'll get the part and we'll be able to open. Thank you. There's nothing on our notice of motion. Number 12, bylaws, first, second, and third reading. Oh, sorry. Everybody skipped over. Oh, no, 12.4 is in there.
Could we get a mover and a seconder to sever that one item, bylaw number 3338-20?
I will.
A mover, seconded by Pat, that we remove item 333820. All in favor? It's carried, so we'll, in this first, second, and third reading, we'll consider the other bylaws.
Moved by Councillor Tate, seconded by Councillor Hatfield, resolved that the following bylaws be introduced and read a first, second, and third time and finally passed, and that the mayor and clerk do sign and seal the same. Any rule of this council to the contrary notwithstanding. Bylaw number 3336-20 to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held on the 18th day of August 2020 and the 15th day of September 2020. Bylaw number 3337-20 to enter into an agreement with Northwest Petroleum Equipment Limited for the replacement of the avgas fuel system at the Wall Municipal Airport. Bylaw number 3339-20 to amend bylaw number 155103 and to authorize the municipality of Wawa to enter into a lease agreement with NAV Canada for the premises located at the Wall Municipal Airport. Bylaw number 3340-20 to authorize civil marriage solemnization services in the municipality of Wawa.
Any questions? All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. So we'll consider 12.4. So we had a motion to remove it. We need a mover and seconder to bring it back in. By Mitch, seconded by Pat.
Moved by Councillor Hatfield, seconded by Councillor Tate, resolved that the following bylaw be introduced and read a first, second, and third time and finally passed, and that the mayor and clerk do sign and seal the same. Any rule of this council to the contrary notwithstanding. Bylaw number 3338-20 to enter into an agreement with J. Proba Contract Limited for the replacement of the water main valves.
Questions? All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Hatfield, seconded by Councillor Tate, resolved that this committee proceed in camera at 8:23 p.m. in order to address the following matters pertaining to a legal issue. One item, staffing, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. Two, a legal issue, offer to purchase property, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board.
Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Thank you, Lindy. Shirley, thank you.
Who do I give it to?
Me.
Yeah.
So you go. I'm going to stay because I want to work on my minutes.
So I what?
I'm going to work on my minutes.
So we're just gonna stay here. So
Oh, I thought you guys went to the bathroom.
I gotta do the,
We can take these off now.
Yes, you can.
I'm still on volume. I gotta do that first before I leave here.
Are we no longer?
I need it there and then. And I think we're live, Mayor.
Thank you. Our next meeting date is Tuesday, October the 6th, and we have a motion to.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Hatfield, resolved that the meeting be adjourned at 8:44 PM.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you.